Welcome to the Upstager Radio Show with your host, Jason Appleton, the bank builder, turning minnows into the sharks of sales and marketing.
Hello, everybody. This is your host, Jason Appleton. Welcome to what I would consider this a first official show of Upstager Radio, and I'm going to start talking a little bit about, just so you kind of understand what's happening. So this will be the first kind of a pseudo-official show. Still kind of getting some bugs worked out and kind of getting a plan together, scheduling some special guests and things like that. You know, we're going to be talking to real estate brokers, mortgage bankers, you name it, and try to give you guys different perspectives on how others have generated their business, built their operations, and so forth. But in the meantime, I'm going to be kind of giving you advice and educating you guys a little bit on some of the things that have helped me and a lot of the other LOs that I've been coaching and training over the years. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about using a CRM as well as buyer happiness. So, one of the big things that I see a lot of loan officers not doing that's absolutely vital for long-term development is a CRM. Now, there are a lot of different CRMs out there. Depending on what bank you're with, they may have their own systems that they prefer you use. Maybe they've worked out a deal with a CRM company. I've actually used HubSpot quite a bit. Prior to that, I was using All Clients. All Clients, for how I used it, it cost me about $25 a month, which wasn't a very big deal. But HubSpot is actually free. And one of the reasons why I merged over to HubSpot is because it's free, and B, it has all the functionality of everything else, and it does a little bit more than that. They actually offer a little product on the side that's also free called Sidekick. Now, what Sidekick does is that it loads into your Outlook or any of your email clients, and it sends you receipts. Back in the old days, anytime you would send an email, if you wanted to send receipt, it would send a prompt to the person you sent the email to, and it would pop up and say, hey, this person wants to send receipt, is it okay? And you'd click yes or no. They basically had to allow you to find out whether or not they ever opened your email, right? Well, Sidekick does this all on the fly without any permissions whatsoever. So you send out an email to an agent, that agent opens it, you get a prompt, a little notification window on the bottom right of your screen. It says, hey, so-and-so just opened your email at 5:47 a.m., that sort of thing. And it's absolutely phenomenal for a lot of what I do. A lot of times you talk to an agent and they're kind of disinterested or they're busy and they say, hey, can you send me an email? Absolutely. Is it okay if I follow up once you've had a chance to read it? Yeah, no problem. Great. So you send the email, you get a notification, that afternoon or the next day or 3 days from now when they've finally opened the email, and you're able to call them right up. Hey, it looks like you got a chance to look at the email I sent. Just wanted to follow up and see what kind of questions you might have about what I can do for you. It works really well. So anyway, Sidekick works with HubSpot. And it's all free, so it's really a no-brainer. Now, one of the other things that I find very worthwhile in HubSpot is when you're loading contacts into the system, it will go out and automatically try to find all the social media accounts created with the email address you input for that person. So it'll look for their Twitter, it'll look at Facebook, and so forth and so on. So if you're adding real estate agents to your CRM, HubSpot will go out and try to find the social media contacts so if you're, if it's, John Smith at kw.com, well, if that real estate agent created a Twitter account, a Facebook account, and so forth with that email address, then HubSpot will find it, and then it'll populate a panel in your CRM. So, and I find that extremely useful because, there are things that I teach, I jokingly call it stalking your prey. And we'll get into that here in just a second, a little bit. So, and I don't have a mute button on my platform here, so if I cough, I'm sorry. So anyway, using a CRM is absolutely vital for a lot of reasons. A, if you're a loan officer that's looking for any long-term growth in this industry, you really need to keep track of everything you do and everything that happens with all the real estate agents. One of the things that I do, let's say I were to move to, Sarasota or anywhere, any market in the U.S., one of the first things I would do is I would go and I would start building some relationships with agents who could get me a copy either through themselves if they're a broker or through their broker, and get me a copy of the broker metrics for a particular MLS. And it's something that all brokers have access to, but not all agents will. And what you can do is you basically run a report for the top 1,000 or top. I typically start with the top 500 agents in any given market, and it'll rank those agents based on volume for a 12-month period, and it'll give you all the contact information, name, phone number, office address, you name it. And then in some cases, depending on the MLS, it might break down that volume based on buyers and listings. So, it might say, well, this agent did 46 units last year, 38 of them were buyers and 29 were listings and so forth. And that basically gives me a really good heads up as to what the agent's production is. So, I know that everybody I call, because everyone I call is in the top 500 of their market. And it also helps me kind of understand, well, if I'm calling a listing agent, that listing agent may have, let's say an agent has 46 units sold over the course of 12 months, but 43 of them were listings. Well, that agent's not going to really be able to help me very much. It's not to say that I won't call them, but it definitely helps me, in my conversations with the agents or, when I'm just grinding out phone calls. So that's typically what I would start with. And then I would import all that into my CRM. And I don't just import my top 500 list into a CRM and start making calls. I actually import my CRM, or I import the list into my CRM, and then I go out and I'll spend a day, if I have to, and I will find all the photos of those agents and import those agents' photos into my CRM. And I do this because it's very easy to find yourself in a situation where if you're just calling down a list of names that mean nothing, you're just calling a list of names. You're not calling people. And in sales is all about building rapport, building trust, building relationships, especially in the loan officer business. And if you're just calling down a list of names and numbers that mean nothing, then your calls are going to reflect that. So I believe firmly in kind of getting a feel for who I'm talking to, get an idea as to what do they look like? How do they present themselves? You can tell a lot by somebody in the picture. That's not to say that you're not wrong sometimes, because I've had pictures where, I look at somebody and I think, oh, this is going to be a mean one. and then you call and you find out they're actually super friendly, super professional, easy, they want to meet, so you can't always judge a book by its cover, but it does give you a good idea as to what the person's about. And it's extremely helpful when you're making calls. And when you're talking about a top 500 list, or you're in, even if you just put together a list of people that you're calling from Zillow, you know what I mean? You can get an idea from Zillow as to who's doing higher volume, even if you don't have a broker metrics report or something like that, based off of the reviews they have. If an agent has 0 reviews on Zillow, well, either A, they're a referral-based agent that doesn't use leads for anything, so they don't even bother with Zillow, or B, they're just a relatively new agent, or they don't use Zillow for much. And that's not to say that every big agent uses Zillow, but most at least have a Zillow profile for one reason or another. And, a lot of agents understand that they can generate leads just being on Zillow with a high number of reviews. So, that being said, once you get your list imported into your CRM, you go out and you find those photographs because, A, it only takes a quick Google search, a right click, save as, download, upload into your CRM, and it is tedious, but it's tedious time that's actually extremely important for your future growth. I mean, think about it this way. If you're a new loan officer today and you set up 500 of the top agents in your market, and you go out and you spend a day or two getting their photos, then the system is going out there looking for their social media accounts for you. You've got all their contact information. You've got all the information you need to build a 6-figure income right there. No question about it. I've developed entire mortgage banks closing as high as 60 units in a single month just from a top 500 list and doing exactly what I just said. Now, the other side to this is, when you're making these phone calls, it's really important that you're not just tiling for dollars. I've had situations with people that I was coaching out of refinance and into the purchase market, and they're so used to grinding out these phone calls and just running their lines or reading a script or whatever. I'm like not a believer in scripts at all. If anything, I'm a believer in taking a script and then rewriting it to make your own and memorizing it through and through. If you don't, then you're just going to sound like some schmuck on the phone trying to sell something. You're immediately going to be tuned out or hung up on, and you're just not going to get anywhere. So, if you're going to use a script of any kind, you definitely want to make sure that, you memorize it, you make it your own, and it becomes an extension of you and not just something you're reading off a notepad. Because that's just never going to get you anywhere. And on top of that, a lot of LOs kind of look at this as a pressure sale. If you're coming out of refinance, when you're dialing for dollars in the refinance market, it's easy to get kind of caught up. You're making 100, 150 phone calls a day. Everybody you talk to send in a lead online, and they're being called by 10 other loan officers at the same time. And it's kind of a, do or die kind of mentality. Well, when you're calling real estate agents, it's not like that. It's just not. This is more about building a long-term relationship. Maybe you don't get a meeting scheduled in your first call. Maybe you get hung up on in your first call. It doesn't really matter what happens. It's not a do or die scenario. You don't make one call and then, that didn't work out. I X that agent off my list. That's ridiculous. And here's why. So when you're logging this stuff, let's say you have your CRM set up, you've got everybody's photos, you're not just calling names anymore, you're calling people, right? And you're sitting there, you're ready to make your calls. Hopefully, if you're smart, you've got a headset. I use a Logitech wireless headset. If you go to upstager.com and click on shop, I have links to some of the stuff that I use. It's extremely helpful, and you really need to be making calls with a headset, especially if you're in a noisy environment. So actually the headset that I'm using right this minute as I record this is the same one I use to make realtor calls. It's Bluetooth. It was like $60. It's the Logitech C85 or something like that. I can't remember. It's on my site. But anyway, it's very, very good. And it helps cancel out some of the environment noise. So if you're in an environment, I'm not one to be able to make a lot of calls when I've got people shouting, laughing, and talking. If I sound like I'm in a boiler room, it just kills it. I can't deal with that. So, I'll put my headset on and then go, or I'll go to another room or somewhere else. Luckily for me, I work from home, so I have all the freedom I need. But if you don't, definitely want to get a headset. Not only that, but when you're making these calls, you want to be logging everything that you're discussing with the agent in your CRM without fail. And it's a lot easier than, I'm going to write notes down on my notepad, and then, by the end of the day, I'm going to have a whole bunch of notes on all these agents. Then I have to go back and, transfer all this information into my CRM. It's just not productive. Get a headset. Get ready to make your calls. You've got your top 500 lists all ready to go. And when you're making these calls, you log everything. So here's what happens. When you're calling these agents, agents are busy, right? Especially if you're calling a top list. These agents are producers. Most of them are producers. If you got a top 500 list, they're all busy in some regard. So when you're calling these agents, if they blow you off today, it doesn't mean they're going to blow you off tomorrow. If they tell you they're not interested today, it doesn't mean they're not going to be interested tomorrow. So you log all that stuff in your CRM, and here's what I do. I would create tags. So I create tags in my CRM, and, if an agent's really rude, I'll tag them as rude. If an agent hangs up on me, I'll tag them that they hung up on me. And I'll keep little notes. I'll put, agent was extremely busy, ended up hanging up on me in 10 seconds, that kind of stuff. And I log everything. Everything that happens in a phone call with an agent, I log into my CRM because I'm creating a story for the future, okay? And you'll be surprised at how beneficial this information is, because while you're building, here's what happens. You call an agent today, maybe they are rude. Maybe they tell you off, or they're too busy, or I don't need another loan officer. I've got 50 calling me all the time. Buzz off. Whatever the case is, they're not going to remember you. You've done nothing to force them to remember you for any reason. You're just another loan officer. So it doesn't really matter what you do. You can call them back another time. So, and I always call from my cell phone. I don't call from office numbers, because if you come up and it says, XYZ Bank on the phone, chances are you're just going to hit a million voicemails and be grinding out, voicemail calls all day. So I always use my cell phone. And I come up as a number. And here's another quick tip. I never leave voice messages for agents when I'm calling them. And you're going to think, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Why? Because they're not going to call you back, A. And B, if you want a return phone call, nothing's going to get a return phone call with an agent more than just an empty number with no name or information, because they're going to call you back thinking you might be a mislead. And if I were to call 10 agents and not leave 10 voicemails, I'll probably get 5 calls back. And I'm not kidding. So I don't leave messages. So hopefully you caught that quick tip. So all that being said, if I call an agent, let's say I have a week where I call, 50 agents a day. Hopefully I've scheduled a bunch of meetings in that time. But, if not, I have all the notes of every conversation I've had, whatever the situation was. And some days I'll just have an ornery day. Okay, I'll be bored and I'm tired of grinding out calls. I'm tired of being the nice guy and getting walked on, right? This doesn't really happen to me, but I'm just playing devil's advocate for you guys. But what I do is I get a list of agents who maybe they've hung up on me. They're really rude. You get some of those. And I'll click my tag in my CRM and I'll call all of them back in one afternoon. And I'll use a completely different pitch. I'll go crazy. I'll just have fun with it. Because A, I've got nothing to lose. B, they're not going to remember me. It doesn't really matter. And C, if I get their interest somehow, or if I crack a joke about them being too busy, don't hang up on me, I might melt. I mean, if I just say something off the wall that gets their attention and lets them know, yes, okay, I've done this to you twice now. I'll give you 30 seconds. Or what do you got? 30 seconds is all I need to win you over. So in a lot of cases, I keep track of who are the rude ones, who likes to hang up on people, because it arms you for the next time you call. If you're always flying blind, you're going to get the same reactions. Typically, you're going to get the same responses from everybody. But if I'm going through my list and I have notes, oh, well, this person was really friendly, but they're too busy. And then I call them, a week or two later, and I say, hey, you were really busy before, but I wanted to get the opportunity to kind of talk to you and express to you how I could probably help you not be so busy. Just because of the way I do things, I'm going to take a big load off of your back. I already know what their kind of rebuttals are going to be. I already know how I let them beat me in the last call, and enough time has gone by where I'm not being a pest, but I've got a whole new approach. And that's what's going to help me win the war with each one of these agents, because every one of these agents has a different button. And if I wasn't able to push that button at the right time, at the right moment, on the right day, the last time I called, I'm going to have a much better way of going about it the next time. And the only way I'm going to have that information is if I'm keeping track of everything I'm doing in my CRM. So it's absolutely vital that and not only that, but I have to keep it up to date. So, let's say, I have some really good phone calls and I schedule some meetings, and then maybe those meetings don't pan out. I log all that in my CRM. This person no-showed. This person backed out at the last minute with a text. Everything that happens, I keep track of. If I find out what your kids eat for breakfast, I'm putting that in my CRM, because I can bring that up in a conversation, either on the phone in a future day, at a meeting sometime. If we're at a happy hour and I walk up to you and, I get you a drink and we're kind of talking and I'm like, yeah, your kids like, Fruity Loops or whatever, don't they? My kids love that. How'd you know that? Oh, you told me once in a phone call, 6 months ago. I just never forgot. I don't forget things. I'm that good. That's why I'll be great loan officer partner for you. I mean, whatever, cheesy line. But that kind of stuff does actually work. And if you keep track of all of this stuff, it arms you for the future. Because let's put it this way. If you're trying to keep track of all of your junk and Post-it notes and notepads, where are those notepads and Post-it notes going to be a year from now? In the trash, likely a long time ago, and you're constantly doing yourself a disservice by helping yourself start over all the time. You're flying blind in every phone call. If I pull up my CRM right now and I go to my top list, I can call any one of these agents in this market and know everything I've talked about them with, every detail from all the previous phone calls, whether I met them, how the meetings went, you name it. So if I make another phone call today, I know their whole story. I mean, I know typically what they do in production. I know everything about them. And there's nothing more empowering and more confidence building than knowing you have that upper hand on a phone call, because you already know everything about these people. And if you spend the first 30 days of your life just making calls and gathering intel and notes on these people, in your CRM, it will help you for years to come. Keep in mind, I first started my CRM, 2014, 2013? I don't even remember. Back when I was a loan officer. Or no, that was back when because when I was a loan officer, I was refinance. Then I became the director of business development for a lender, which is when I started doing all of this. And my job was just to bring in the business. I never had to bother closing a loan. I will say that, which was great. But I started that CRM. Well, I've been using that same CRM for 3-4 years, and it's helped me develop 3 different mortgage banks now. And that's just in this market. So, it's extremely valuable, and I highly encourage you all to really focus some energy on getting that done. So that being said, if you guys ever have any questions or what have you, I am going to start doing live shows in the future. Once I see some more listens to these shows and things start to pick up a little bit, that way I can go into answering chat questions and things of that nature during the actual shows themselves, which is what I what I really like to do. So that being said, let's go into a little bit. I just want to go into some notes about buyer happiness. Now, there are more things in the future I'll discuss about CRMs and cold calling and all of that stuff, but I don't want this show to get too long. I want to, until I have some interviews and things going on, I don't want them to drag out too long. So, buyer happiness. This is something that I see so many loan officers kind of slacking on, and I want to put things into perspective for everybody. A lot of guys, especially in the purchase market, when an agent refers a buyer to you, it is absolutely vital that buyer is elated by the time you've closed their loan. If they're not, you've not only screwed your potential for referrals from that buyer, but you've also screwed your potential for referrals from the agent that referred that buyer to you. I see so many people skimping out on closing gifts, not making a big deal out of it. Oh, I only made $1,500 on this. Go buy a $25 coupon book. Give that as a closing gift. Every buyer should have a closing gift from the loan officer. The buyer's going to get a closing gift from the loan officer. I guarantee you the agent's doing it like a religion, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be either. I see so many people, they think, oh, well, the deal went bad, or the buyer was really difficult and drove me crazy. Maybe they changed the title company at the last minute and threw you for a loop and extended the closing time, and everything went to hell in a handbasket. And just the fact that you were able to get that deal saved, at the last minute should be gift enough. All this other stuff, that's hogwash. I mean, that buyer needs to be so happy with you as a loan officer that they're going back to that agent telling them how amazingly happy they are. I can't tell you how many agents I've talked to, how many deals and referrals and relationships I've been able to set up just because the original loan officer that agent was working with sucked. And I don't just mean sucked because they weren't able to get deals closed. They just sucked as people. This is a people business, folks. This is the relationship building business. If you're not focused on continuing to build a relationship through and through with your referral partners and everyone they touch and send you, you're not going to get anywhere and you're not going to build your volume. You can't treat this like a refinance operation where it's a one and done situation, you're on to the next. Whatever happens, happens. You have to absolutely focus on keeping everybody happy. When you close a deal, one of the main things that you need to do is what I call calling the Triple Crown. Basically, the 3 kings of your world. Your buyer's agent, the buyer themselves, and the listing agent on that deal. Because those 3 people have the potential to refer business to you after you've closed the deal. If you are not calling all 3 of them, not only to set up meetings with everybody, not everybody, but like your listing agent. Everybody neglects the listing agent just because, a listing agent or somebody that was the listing agent on your deal doesn't mean that they're all 100% listing. That could be the only listing they did out of 56 different buyer transactions that year. You don't know. You need to call them. But you need to make sure that everybody's happy. And so, when a deal closes, you should be actively going after all three of these people for feedback, honest to goodness feedback. I don't give a shit if you know that you sucked during this deal. You dropped the ball, whatever. You're like, I don't need to call him. I know the deal was bad. That's not the point. The point is showing everybody that you actually care about the fact that you did poorly, and you want to know the things from everyone's perspective involved in the deal, how to be better. That's what this is about. And it's about gaining favor and gaining more professional respect and coming to, kind of an agreement or an arrangement or an understanding as to why things were I'm not talking about getting into arguments with anybody. But, if I call the buyer's agent, hey, I know that there were some hiccups in this deal and there were a lot of things that, really none of us can control, but that's okay. We got it closed and I just wanted to get some feedback from you, good, bad, or ugly. How do you feel about the loan? Did I take care of everything as well as I could? And if not, honestly, what could I do to make things better for the future for both of us? And you basically do the same thing with the buyer. I don't care if the buyer was a complete asshole. I don't care what the situation is with the buyer. You're calling them, whether it's to make amends, whether it's to get feedback, whatever. You just want to show everybody involved that you care. Because a lot of LOs won't. A lot of LOs just take everything for granted. And one thing that drives me absolutely nuts is when I see loan officers trying to build themselves in the purchase business, and they quite literally take everybody for granted. They don't send thank you cards or thank you gifts to the realtors. They don't send closing gifts to the buyers. They're not calling the listing agent on the deals. It's like, what the hell is wrong with you people? It's absolutely amazing that you're even a loan officer. It goes so far beyond just being able to get a deal closed. And so that's really what a lot of this is about. Buyer happiness is paramount, because if that buyer is not happy with you and you didn't do absolutely everything you could in the process of that loan to keep and make sure everybody was happy, you're making consistent follow-up calls, letting everybody know what's going on with updates no less than once a week. If you're closing a deal in 21 days or 7 to 10 days or whatever the case may be, you still need to be calling these people and letting them know what the updates are. If you're not doing that, you're failing everybody involved, and it's not likely you're going to continue to get more deals. And even if, let's just put this into another perspective here. Some of you might be thinking, well, I've got one buyer who sent me 4 deals, and I never call them with updates on any of them, and they sent me another deal this week. It's not going to last. It's not going to last, because just because they're continuing to send you deals right now doesn't mean they're not looking. It doesn't mean they're not looking to replace your slacking ass with somebody that's going to do a much better job. That much I can guarantee. Because agents do not want to have to chase down their buyers. They do not want to have to chase down the details on milestones and progress on their deals. It's not how it works. You are in the service business. If you're not providing quality customer service, and your customers are everybody involved with that deal, even the listing agent, everyone involved in that deal is absolutely important and vital to your future success. If you're not keeping up with everybody, you're going to lose out. If you're not, I've never sent a thank you gift. I've never sent a thank you card. I've got an agent that sent me, 15 deals last year. I never sent her a thank you for anything. Okay. What's her number? That's all I can tell you. What's that agent's number? Him or her, whoever. Because I'm going to take them from you. Because I guarantee you right now, you might be saying, I never did this, I never do that. Well, chances are you're not going to have any relationship for a year and you've never sent thank you gifts or thank you cards. I can tell you that much. But if by some miracle you got an agent that truly does not care about any of that stuff, I will be absolutely shocked. And not only that, it's like in a marriage. If you're in a relationship with somebody that you care about, they do things for you, they help your life, they make your life better, and you show no thank you or gratitude whatsoever, can't wait to see how that divorce works out. It's just a matter of time. And that's what these relationships are. When you're working with a real estate agent and you're establishing a referral relationship, this is a marriage. This is a back and forth relationship. You are ultimately becoming an extension of that real estate agent's team, whether it's a one-man team or a 10-man team. You're an extension of that operation. And your whole job is to provide a great deal of benefit, in a lot of different ways. So, one of the primary ways of doing that is buyer happiness. And one quick note that, especially if you're a new loan officer and you're listening to this, I highly encourage you, let's say you haven't closed the deal yet. Okay, you just got a referral from somebody. Yay, you got a referral. It's your first deal. It's an FHA loan. You need to go through all of the FHA guidelines and learn every nook and cranny of that loan product. You need to know absolutely everything about that loan product. And moving forward, because you don't want to get caught off guard a day before close about a stipulation from underwriting that they didn't bring up, for whatever reason. And it's, or an overlay. Let's say, the FHA guideline says, well, you can close anything at a 500 credit score, but your investor overlay says they're not going to buy anything under a 580. Well, you need to know those differences. So every time you get a deal, you need to use that opportunity to learn everything there is to know. Because here's what's going to happen. As a new loan officer, if you're not putting in the time to go through these loan programs and figure out every little nook and cranny to make sure that you're not getting caught off guard and screwing up the deal at the last minute, okay, thus resulting in you losing a referral partner because you're too inexperienced to get anything done, which I see happen. The buyer's not happy because maybe they found out at the last minute they need to bring more money to close than they originally were planning to because of something you told them or a mistake you didn't catch. All that stuff is important. But you need to learn, these are the perfect opportunities for you to learn everything you can about these different loan programs. And on top of that, keeping up on new products available from your company. So before I get into, in a future show, we're going to go into some marketing and keeping tabs on everybody, keeping everybody updated with new programs and different methods for that. But for now, this is a good 30 minutes. I wanted to just kind of touch base. If anything, give you guys kind of a more broad example of what to expect in the future outside of just, real estate agent interviews, loan officer interviews. I'm going to even do some title company interviews and things like that. And this will kind of give you an idea as to what to expect from my training and coaching as well. I did just open up a new service. I get a lot of requests for one-on-one coaching. I do accountability management and things like that. I basically take loan officers and I say, all right, this is everything you need to do. This is how you need to handle your calls, how you conduct your meetings, how you handle this and that, your marketing, your social media, your CRM, the whole nine. And, I walk you through all of that stuff. And then as you're making progress, I monitor your progress through tracking reports that tell me, how many calls are you making? How many calls are you concluding? How many good conversations are you having? How many meetings are you having? Are you going to happy hours? Yada, yada, yada. I track all of that, and I use that information to help figure out where you're at. Are your phone calls weak, which aren't resulting in more meetings? Are your meetings weak? It's not resulting in a lot of referrals. What do we need to work on? And then I basically coach you every week into increasing your production. And it's very, very successful. It's very. I've taken loan officers from 250 to 500,000 a month in volume in refinance. And now those loan officers are doing $1 million, $1.5 million. Some are doing $2 million a month in volume in purchase now. So, it's very successful for people, and it's typically only something that I reserve for full service bank clients. So if a mortgage company wants me to consult with them on developing a branch as a whole, then just an extension of that is helping all of the loan officers, training the LOs in the office, bringing on new loan officers, and so forth. But now I am offering a kind of a one-on-one mentorship. It's $500 a month if you're making under $100,000 a year, and your branch managers can pay for it. If they're familiar with me at all, it's likely that they'll pay for it for you. And if they're not, well, educate them. Send them to my site. They can check out my video course or my book and kind of understand things. But typically, I won't do any mentoring in my Cincinnati market, only because I do have an exclusivity agreement with my primary client here, and I won't do anything to teach my competition. So anywhere else in the United States, and I do everything through audio, video, Skype, so it doesn't matter where you are in the U.S. or the world for that matter, as long as you speak English and you understand what I'm saying, I think we could be very productive. So it's upstager.com, just click shop, you'll see the one-on-one mentorship package there. And until the next time, feel free to send me an email if you guys listen to this. You have specific questions on things you want me to answer in a future show. Just send me an email with your questions, and I promise I will answer them in detail on the next episode. Until then, I bid you all adieu, and I will see you soon. This is Jason Appleton, a.k.a. The Bank Builder with Upstager Radio, signing off.